Hello, welcome back to another Values Room channel. I'm Jay from Jay's Book Square, and today we're doing the mid-year freak out book tag. This is the book tag that I think I've done every year. I'll link the other ones in the past. They're really just like a check-in for that mid-year point, and which is about halfway through June. That point has obviously passed by the time this video goes out, but I have 14 questions to go over. Some of them have several answers, and I'll pop up all of the books on the screen except for like one or two questions, and I have some stats at the very end of the video, and so anybody who wants to stick around can do that. Alright, we're gonna go ahead and get started. The first one that we have is the best book you read so far this year, and by far, well, not by far, I've given out a lot of 5 stars, which we'll talk about at the very end of the video, but the best book that when I think of like what would be my number one book of the year so far, it has to be Finna by Nia Decole, I think is how you say the name. I think that's right. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, but it's on the screen in case you guys are curious. This is a portal fantasy novella. I read it back in February, I want to say. It follows these two girls. Oh, one is non-binary. I was right. So this relationship, main character is a female, and then the relationship with their partner, and they end up having to go through this portal to go hunt down this old lady because of their retail job. So it's a talk on retail therapy, and if that's good for you. Also, like, this really fascinating like portal fantasy world, all done in like 170 pages, and it blew my mind, and it was everything I've ever wanted. That by far I think is my number one like 5-star read. This next question, however, was super hard to narrow down because I've read so many good sequels this year, like so many good sequels. It's crazy to me. But the second question is the best sequel you've read so far this year, and it does clarify the best sequel, just like the first one clarified the best book. I have several 5 stars I could have mentioned for that. This one has to go to Hellbent. I was really thrown between Don't Fear the Reaper and Hellbent by Lee Bardugo. So Don't Fear the Reaper was a phenomenal and was pretty much a 5-star throughout the entire thing. Hellbent also wasn't like a full 5-star throughout the whole thing. I'll have a review coming up later on this month of this book. I just finished it the other day, which could be the reason why it is taking that place a little higher up. It was phenomenal. This is the second book in the Alex Stern series, and I'll talk a little bit more in that video and also in my wrap up. Yeah, I adored Hellbent. It was phenomenal in my opinion, and I couldn't recommend it enough. The next question is the new release you haven't read yet but want to. This one obviously I think will go to Yellowface by Ara Kwong. I'm planning on doing a video where I read Yellowface and Babel, which I'll talk about later on in this video as well, in a single video, so I can get around to it. I'm very excited for Yellowface. Yellowface follows an author, a white American author, who ends up writing a novel in college, and it's not really performing well. It's not selling well. And she is roommates with this Asian American woman who ends up dying, and her manuscript is on fire. It's selling very well, and so she ends up doing it under a pseudonym and selling the book and becoming like this ultra famous author, and her picture looks, you know, very racist and stuff, and it's about the repercussions of that, and I'm really curious about it. And because Arth Kwong is known to write fantasy, I wonder if that person is going to come back or anything. I have a lot of questions about Yellowface, and it's definitely one of my top reads of the year, and so hopefully I can get to it this month, if not next. Then my most anticipated release for the second half of the year has to go to Charming Young Man. I have no idea what this is about. Like, no idea in my life, but it's by Elliot Schaefer. I was on NetGalley the other day trying to give myself some e-arcs. This one popped up and I was like, Elliot Schaefer, why does that name sound so familiar? And that's because he wrote my favorite book of last year, and that's The Darkness Outside of Us. This is another YA contemporary that he's writing. The last was in space. I think this one is not. It's just based on the cover. I have no idea what it's about, but it's by far my most anticipated thing coming out later on this year. I mean, I have other stuff that's super anticipated, which we'll talk about, but like this one literally found out about like 5 days ago. I can't stop thinking about it. I want it so bad. The biggest disappointment. Interestingly enough, on this list, we don't have the worst book of the year. I don't even think I have a worst book. Like, I have several like 1-star reviews and stuff that I've given out, but I don't know if I have like a worst book so far this year. My biggest disappointment was a toss-up between a few different books, but I had to go with one of my most anticipated books of the year, and it came out the day after my birthday, and that would be The Stolen Heir. Now, I've gotten to why this was a very big disappointment to me, so I'll link it in the cards. I did a whole review about the book in May, I think. I was just really underwhelmed by this sequel. There was a lot of things that I liked about it, that I was happy that Holly Black decided to do. There's also a lot of things in here that I was really disappointed about. This by far gets my biggest disappointment. The biggest surprise, I think, is always really hard for me because I never go into a book thinking I'm not gonna like it. I always go into the book with the best intentions in heart. I'm gonna give it to Gideon the Ninth by Teresa Messier, I think is the last name. This one I can't really explain to you. I read it in my 5 sci-fi vlog, so I'll link it up cards as well. But it blew me out of the water. This is one of those books that I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna really like. Those are like really high sci-fi, and there's like a lot of weird imagery and stuff in it to the point where I could get really confused. And so I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like it. I don't know if I'm gonna hate it. I don't really know where I'm gonna stand when I walk out of this novel. But all I know is that I'm excited to read it. It's extremely long. Most people say you can't comprehend it on the first read. I do agree with that statement. I didn't give it a perfect 5-star, no way, but it got like a 4.5. It was almost as close to perfect. By the end, I kind of zoned out a little because I got a little lost in the middle, so there's not everything that lines up, and so it's not even the book's fault I got a 4.5. It just demands a reread, and I will probably read it before I read the sequels. But what a beautiful series that I did not know I needed in my life, and so I'm happy that I got put on that list last minute and I read it. So if you're a new author, debut or new to you, so it doesn't have to be like a new author that came out this year, just something new to you. I went with Brandon Sanderson because he wrote Skyward. That was my first ever Brandon Sanderson that I've ever read, was Skyward. I've tried him in the past and have not really liked it, and so he's not technically new to me. Like, if we're going by the books here, I'm gonna go with Brandon Sanderson. Skyward is by far one of my favorite books of the year so far. I will mention that I have a series on my channel where I'm reading first-time authors, and so I'm sure this would change if you ask me in 6 months, because hopefully by then I've read 6 or 7 more authors that are brand new to me, if not more, because I've been reading like 2 books to try to figure out which one I like better for that video here recently, so who knows. But hopefully I would have more on that list by the end of the year. I keep trying to put more and more people, new people I don't know, on my anticipated lists or like whatever it might be to get to. My newest fictional crush, I'm gonna go with Darlington from Hellbent. Now technically I knew he existed in 9th house, but I don't actually think he grew attached to me in a way of like a crush. I don't know. I went through it, all the books I read this year, and I personally don't have like someone who stuck out to me from a novel so far this year. That's my newest fictional crush. So we're gonna go with Darlington because I think he's the closest thing to it. There's a certain line in Hellbent, if you read it, you probably know what it is. That's always just stuck out to me in a good way. That's where we're at. Not bad. Just I don't know how accurate it is to that question. I definitely prefer other ones in the past. Definitely like the ones I came up with for March. I know in February I talked about several of my favorite fictional crushes. I'll try to link that video as well for you guys. Has some good recommendations. My newest favorite character, also a bit of a toss-up because I read a lot of books, but a lot of books I'm giving 5 stars right now are sequels and things like that, and so they're characters that I already knew that weren't, you know, they're not even a new character from a new series or anything, they're just characters that I already knew. So I went with Gideon or Harlow for this one. I love the characters from Fina for sure, but like Gideon has such like a sharp humor that I fucking adored her character throughout the entire thing. I would say almost every character I read from that vlog was spot on perfect. So any of the sci-fi books ever this year were spot on perfect with their character development. Even the newest one I just read, which was like historical science fiction, I think I counted her dystopian, I can't remember what it's called. It's from the author who did Ring Shout. She was a phenomenal character, but I couldn't tell you who it was. Like currently my favorite character I think of the year is Alex Stern, but she is definitely a character I already knew. I just fell back in love with. A book that made you cry. I've not had a book that made me sob this year. I'm not crying about that. I'm not looking for a book to make me cry this year. I'm actually trying to stay away from them. Not a bad thing. Just want to put it out there. I, however, did cry today, or yesterday, and when I read the half of it, A Memoir by Malice and Beer. There's just some things that she talks about in this, questions she answers from fans and stuff, that truly just sat perfectly in my heart and really just dug down, and I was like, oof, that got me, and I did start tearing up a little, not gonna lie. Not enough to like really make me like feel the emotion. I'd also say, you know, We Spread by Ian Reid is another one that I'd recommend. I'd also recommend that like if you're looking to cry. I think We Spread by Ian Reid, especially if you're really close with like your grandma, your grandpa, or anybody who's like older, who's going through some like really like things that normally only elderly people really go through. I think We Spread would really attack your heartstring. The half of it really just attacked my personal heartstrings, so I don't know how much it would affect you. But a book that made you happy, the first one that came to mind was by far Parisha Wants to Cuddle. This is a weird horror novel about a group of influencers that have to go off to an island to film a TV show. Like the last little bit of the TV show, it's like, kind of like The Bachelor. Weird shit starts to happen and they start dying, and it really did bring me like a lot of joy. I smiled a lot while reading Patricia Wants to Cuddle. I even laughed The most beautiful book that you've acquired this year. I have not really been buying books this year. I did a book haul, so I do have new books. I'll link the book haul. I have to talk about the beauty. I think last year I once again talked about a Cassandra Clare book. I'm pretty sure the year before I talked about Cassandra Clare. I just think they're gorgeous, okay? Judge me for it. I don't care. We gotta talk about Chain of Thorns. I don't love Grace Blackthorne, okay? And she is the cover here. But if you don't love Grace Blackthorne, well then go to freaking James Herondale. He's gorgeous. This cover is gorgeous. It fits so well with the group. And I can't wait to buy them in paperback, and so they can fit the rest of my collection. But I'm very happy that I have them in this form. Question number 13 is, what books do you need to read before the end of the year? Any book that I've not read in my 23 books I need to read in 2023. That's quite a few. I'm just gonna link you to the video, but I'm gonna list them off by name. I probably won't put them on the screen just because there's so many books to go over. The books I've not read from this spread of my bullet journal are as following: The Writing Retreat, Broken Perfect Flies. I'm like 50% into that. It's been really good so far, just taking my time. Brothers and Sisters Enter the Forest, Dragonfall, Family Lore, Immortals of Khoi Gong, The Salt Grows Heavy. I'm like 25% in. I don't know how I feel yet. The Last Word by Taylor Adams, Happy Place by Emily Henry, In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune, Corrine by Jade Song, The House with the Good Bones by T.K. Fisher, The Witch and the Vampire, Page Boy by Elliot Page, A Twisted Love Story by Samantha Downing, Silver Nitrate by Evelia Moreno Garcia are some of the few from this list. Then other ones, as I was writing down ones, we have Swordcatcher, which is the new adult Cassandra Clare novel that comes out in September. Earth Ends, which also comes out in September. That's the final book in the Marionette series. You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight, which is a slasher book that's supposed to be very queer-based. I'm looking for everything slashers this year, so if you have any, please send them my way. I'll put you on the list. Babel, like I said, and I'm in the middle of it, but Chain of Thorns, I'm like that far into it, so I definitely would like to finish it. And my favorite book to movie adaptation, I think I've only seen one this year so far that I could remember, and that would be Daisy Jones and the Six, and I did love that adaptation. This is the point in time where if you don't care about stats, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. We're going to talk about stats. I have some images and stuff to pull up on the screen. If you're interested in how I got these images, it's all through Storygraph. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about it. So I've read a total of 79 books this year. On Goodreads, it says I've read 80, so I don't really know which number is correct, but we're going by Storygraph's number, which is 79. Goal this month, though, is to hit 100 before the end of June, so we'll see if that ends up happening. I've been reading some shorter books, so I feel like it could happen, but we'll see. I'm switching gears a little bit. Page count is 22,745 pages, which I actually think is pretty freaking great compared to like some of my previous years. I think I'm reading longer books this year, which is why I've read less books, because I've just been consuming longer content. Speaking of pages, let's run through those variables. 54% are less than 300 pages, 32% are 300 to 489 pages, and 14% of that is 500 plus pages, which I think is pretty cool. 91% of that was fiction, and 9% of that was nonfiction. My top genre this year so far has been fantasy with 37 books. I've done a lot of rereads and stuff that would be counted as like urban fantasy, which is probably the reason why. And my lowest category, there was a few, but the one I counted was one literary fiction book, which was by far, I'd say that's probably my worst book of the year, was my literary fiction. 73% of those books were in print, 27% of those were in digital. I did read a few in audio, I just don't ever like count them as an audiobook. My most read author this year was Cassandra Clare with 9 books. My average rating of the year is a 3.97 stars, which I think is crazy to me, and the most stars were given out to a 5 at 20 books. Once again, I did a lot of rereads to the point where I was like, how many rereads did I do? And I read 24 books that were rereads. That is because I'm rereading the entire Shadowhunter series, and I got to the point where I got to novellas, and I'm counting each novella separately on Goodreads in Storygraph, just because I'm reading them separately. I'm not reading them in the bindups. You know, you do what you want with that information, but that's how I'm doing it. That's a big reason, I think, why there's so many rereads, because there were so many like individual stories in the bindups. And that, my friend, is my mid-year freakout book tag. I'm nowhere near where I want to be. By this time of the year, actually by the end of March, I like to be about 100 books into the year. And then by this time of the year, I like to be about 130-ish books. So I'm definitely not hitting any of like my big goals. Page count wise, I think I'm on a perfect set. Remember what my goal was, my final goal for that one was. I think we're on a good pathway to hit whatever that final goal was. I'm still 19 or 20 books behind schedule to hit my goal for the books this year. and I did end up having to switch it over into that category of it telling me that I'm 19 books behind so I could force myself to read. And also my star rating, I'm really happy that's 3.97, and I would say it does reflect the books that I'm reading. I read, like I said, I've read a lot of rereads, and most of my rereads have been 5 stars, which is really, really cool, between like a 4 and a 5, which is really, really cool. And overall, this year, even though I've not read as much as I wanted to, I've discovered some new authors that I've really enjoyed, and I've been trying to step out of my comfort zone. So let me know how your guys' reading is doing this year. I would love to know in the comments down below, and I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you so much for tagging along. If you guys want to play the game and answer the questions will be linked down below in the description, and so you can just copy and paste them or number them or however you want to do in the comments. I'd love to know your answers to them, and I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.